The city was quiet that night, too quiet for comfort. Cold winds swept through the narrow streets, carrying the smell of metal and smoke. Neon lights flickered on broken signs, painting the cracked walls in blue and red. Ethan walked alone, his coat pulled tight, his breath turning to fog. He had just finished another long shift at the factory. 12 hours of noise, heat, and oil. All he wanted was to reach home, sit down, and forget about the world. But fate had other plans. As he turned into an empty alley, he heard something faint, a small sound like someone crying. He froze. The sound came again, a soft whimper from the shadows ahead. Ethan's instincts told him to walk away. This city was full of trouble, and curiosity usually got you killed. But something about that sound felt different. It wasn't anger or fear. It was pain, the kind that came from someone who had already lost too much. Slowly, he stepped closer. Near a pile of trash cans, he saw her. A small figure crouched behind a metal bin. The dim light from a neon sign above revealed pale skin with a faint blue glow beneath it, and long silver hair that shimmered even in the darkness. Her hands were chained and her clothes were torn. She wasn't human. Ethan blinked. He had seen aliens before, and everyone had since the migration accords, but never one so young, so scared. The girl looked no older than 10. She clutched a small glowing pendant to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her alive. "It's okay," Ethan said softly, raising his hands. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The girl looked up, her silver eyes wide with fear. She shook her head, whispering something he couldn't understand, her voice trembling. Before Ethan could take another step, a loud voice echoed from the far end of the alley. "Well, look what we got here," a man sneered, stepping out of the shadows. 2 others followed him, rough-looking men, faces scarred and eyes full of greed. One carried a knife. "Alien brat escaped again, huh? And look, a human hero trying to play savior." Ethan's stomach twisted. The girl backed against the wall, her hands shaking. "Let her go," Ethan said quietly. The man laughed. "You serious? These aliens aren't worth a credit. She probably stole that glowing trinket she's holding. Step aside, pal, before you get hurt." Ethan knew he should. He wasn't a fighter. He was just a worker, tired, broke, and hungry. But as he looked at the terrified girl, he couldn't move away. Something deep inside him, something human, refused to let her suffer. "Leave her alone," he said again, his voice steady this time. The man growled and raised his knife. "Suit yourself." Ethan barely had time to react. The blade flashed, cutting across his arm. Pain shot through him, but he stood his ground. He pushed the man back, trying to shield the girl. Another attacker rushed forward, and Ethan felt another sharp stab, this time in his side. He gasped, falling to his knees. The world tilted. The cold concrete beneath him turned red. The girl screamed, a high, piercing sound that made the air vibrate. Suddenly, her pendant burst with light. The glow surrounded her, spreading like silver mist. Ethan could barely see, his vision fading, but he felt her small hand touch his chest. "Please," she whispered, her voice soft but full of emotion. "Don't die." Then everything went silent. The light grew brighter, blinding him. He felt warmth spreading through his body, through his blood. The pain began to fade, replaced by a strange calm. As Ethan collapsed, he saw her eyes, glowing brighter than the stars. She whispered something in her alien tongue, words he didn't understand but somehow felt deep in his heart. The last thing he remembered was her tears falling onto his cheek before everything turned black. In that dark alley, under the flickering lights, a bond was born. A bond that would change everything. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was quiet. For a moment, he thought he was dead. The world around him was a blur, colors melting together, sounds distant like echoes in water. Then slowly his senses returned. He was lying on a soft bed covered with a thin metallic sheet. The room smelled clean, almost too clean, like disinfectant and metal. He blinked. The ceiling above him glowed faintly blue. This wasn't his small apartment, nor was it a city hospital. The air hummed, a strange rhythm like the sound of machines breathing. He tried to sit up and pain shot through his chest. His hand went to his side expecting blood, but there was none. Only smooth skin where the knife had cut deep. "The wound was gone. What the hell?" he whispered, staring in disbelief. "You're awake." The voice was soft, calm, and familiar. Ethan turned and froze. The alien girl stood near the door, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked different now. Her torn clothes were replaced by a white robe, her chains gone, but she still held that same pendant in her hand. Ethan's heart pounded. You healed me?" She tilted her head slightly, her silver hair falling over her shoulders. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. You were hurt because of me." Ethan struggled to speak. "Where are we?" "This is safe place," she replied softly. "Old shelter. Hidden below the city. My people used it long ago." He looked around again. The walls weren't made of concrete but smooth, glowing metal, etched with alien symbols that seemed to move when he stared too long. Strange energy pulses ran through the room like veins of light. Ethan sat up slowly. "You saved me. But why?" The girl looked down, her fingers clutching the pendant tightly. "Because you didn't run," she said quietly. "No human ever stands for us." "You did," her words hit him hard. For the first time, Ethan saw the exhaustion in her eyes. The kind that didn't come from fear but from years of running, hiding, and losing everything. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then whispered, "Leora." Ethan smiled weakly. "Leora, I'm Ethan." Leora nodded slightly, her expression softening. "Thank you, Ethan." Before he could reply, a loud mechanical buzz echoed through the room. A holographic screen flickered to life on the wall. Leora's face turned pale. Ethan turned to see alien text scrolling rapidly. A warning signal. "What's happening?" he asked. "They found us," she whispered, fear filling her voice. "The hunters. They tracked the energy from my healing." Ethan stood, ignoring the pain still lingering in his muscles. "Hunters? You mean those guys from the alley?" Leora shook her head. "No, much worse. They work for humans now. Bounty men who capture my kind and sell them. They don't stop until they get what they want." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we have to move." She looked up at him, surprised. "You'll help me again?" "Of course," he said simply. "You saved my life. I'm not letting them take yours." Leora's lips trembled, almost like she wanted to smile but didn't know how. The warning lights flashed red. The hum of engines grew louder above them. The ground shook slightly. The hunters were near. Leora rushed to a small metal door at the back. "This way," she said. "Leads to old tunnels. We can escape through there." Ethan followed her into the dark passage, his heart pounding. The walls glowed faintly as they moved, reacting to Leora's touch. The air grew colder, the sound of footsteps echoing from behind, metallic and sharp. Ethan glanced at her. "Leora, who are these people really? Why do they want you?" She looked straight ahead, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because of what I carry," she said, touching her pendant. "It's not just a light. It's a key to something humans lost long ago." Before Ethan could ask more, the tunnel behind them exploded in a burst of smoke and fire. The hunters had found them. Leora grabbed Ethan's hand, her eyes glowing bright like stars. "Run," she said. "Run and don't look back." And together, they vanished into the dark, a human and an alien girl bound by fate, running from a storm neither fully understood. The tunnels twisted like the veins of an ancient beast. Ethan could hear the pounding of his own heartbeat echoing off the walls. Each step splashed through puddles of dark water, the sound mixing with the distant rumble of heavy boots. The hunters were close, too close. Leora ran ahead, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. The pendant around her neck pulsed with a soft blue light, guiding them through the maze. The walls seemed to come alive as they passed, strange markings flickering faintly as if reacting to her presence. "Left," she shouted, and Ethan turned sharply, almost slipping on the slick ground. His breath came in ragged gasps, the pain from his still healing wounds flaring with every movement. Behind them, a burst of light cut through the darkness, a search drone, hovering low and scanning the tunnel. Ethan grabbed Leora's arm and pulled her behind a collapsed pillar. The drone's red beam swept past them, humming mechanically, before fading away into the shadows. Leora's hands trembled. "They are faster now," she whispered. "They have human tech mixed with alien power." Ethan frowned. "Why are they after you, Leora? What's in that pendant?" Her eyes flickered with hesitation. "It's not only a key, it's a memory. The last memory of my mother." He blinked. "A memory?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "She was a scientist. Before humans destroyed her colony, she hid something inside this pendant, a map, to something powerful. Something she said could save both our kinds. Ethan's stomach turned. And they want it. Leora nodded, tears glimmering in her silver eyes. If they find it, they will use it to control us again. Before Ethan could answer, a loud metallic crash echoed down the tunnel. They froze. From the shadows behind them, figures emerged. Tall, armored men with glowing red visors. Hunters. Their weapons crackled with blue plasma. "Run!" Ethan shouted, grabbing Leora's hand again. They sprinted through the winding tunnel, the sound of energy bolts sizzling past them. One struck the wall inches away, showering them in sparks. Leora pointed ahead. "There's a lift, oiled transport shaft." They reached a large metal platform covered in dust and wires. Ethan slammed his hand on the control panel, but nothing happened. "It's dead," he shouted. Leora stepped forward, her eyes glowing. She placed her palm against the panel. The pendant around her neck pulsed, sending thin streams of light into the circuits. The machine hummed and then roared to life. "Go," she said. The lift began to rise, rattling as it moved up through the narrow shaft. Below them, the hunters fired, their bolts sparking against the metal walls. One shot grazed Ethan's leg. He bit back a cry, gripping the railing hard. Leora leaned forward, placing a glowing hand on the wound. Within seconds, the pain faded, replaced by a warm, tingling sensation. He looked at her in awe. "You're full of surprises," she gave a faint smile. "And you're full of scars." For the first time since the chase began, Ethan laughed softly. But the moment didn't last long. The lift shook violently. "They're following us," Leora said. Through the gaps in the metal grating, Ethan could see a hunter climbing up the shaft, using magnetic grips. His glowing red visor stared directly at them. Without thinking, Ethan pulled a loose pipe from the corner and swung it down. It hit the hunter's helmet, but the man didn't fall. Instead, he raised his arm, charging another plasma shot. "Get down," Leora cried. She raised her hand, and the pendant's light burst outward, a bright flash of blue energy that filled the shaft. The hunter screamed as the light swallowed him, and then there was silence. Ethan stared at her, stunned. What was that?" Leora's face was pale. "Power," she whispered. "Too much power." The lift reached the surface level with a final jolt. The doors opened to reveal an abandoned district of the city. Empty streets, broken signs, and flickering lights. Ethan stepped out, scanning the shadows. "We can't stay here long," Leora nodded, clutching her pendant. "No, but we must find the next place on the map." "My mother said it begins where the old sky falls." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, they both heard it. A soft hum in the distance. Not hunters this time, but something else. Something alive. The ground beneath them vibrated slightly. Blue light began to seep through the cracks of the street. Ethan looked at Leora. "Tell me that's not bad." She shook her head slowly, eyes wide with fear and wonder. "It's not bad," she said. "It's waking up." And as the light grew stronger beneath their feet, they realized the city itself was not dead. It was sleeping, and now it had sensed them. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the faint blue light spread across the cracked pavement. Ethan and Leora froze. The air vibrated softly, like the heartbeat of something enormous beneath them. Streetlights that had been dead for years flickered back to life one by one, casting ghostly shadows across the ruined district. "Leora," Ethan whispered. "What's happening?" She didn't answer immediately. Her silver eyes reflected the glowing light as she knelt and placed her hand against the cracked ground. The blue energy pulsed once and responded to her touch. The light rippled outward, forming strange ancient symbols on the street. "It's awakening," she murmured. "My people called it the core of sleep. We thought it was lost. But it's here under this city." Ethan frowned, trying to steady his breathing. "Awakening? What does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "something older than both our species just noticed us." Before Ethan could reply, a deep, rumbling sound echoed from below, like the groan of shifting metal and stone. The buildings around them began to hum faintly, dust falling from their edges. The entire district vibrated with life. Ethan instinctively grabbed Leora's arm. "We should move," but before he could finish, a blue beam shot from the street beneath them, surrounding both of them in a sphere of light. Ethan's vision blurred. For a moment, everything went silent, and then they were standing somewhere else. The ruined streets were gone. They stood inside a massive underground chamber filled with shimmering structures of crystal and metal. The air felt alive. Floating around them were faint holographic projections, alien figures tall and graceful, their movements looping like memories. Leora stared in awe. This is my people's city. Before the fall. Ethan turned slowly, speechless. It was beautiful. A cathedral of light buried beneath centuries of dirt and steel. Towers of blue crystal reached upward, glowing softly, while bridges of pure energy connected them. In the center of the chamber was a large platform, pulsing with a slow, rhythmic light, like the heartbeat of the city itself. Ethan took a step closer. Is it real? Or some kind of projection? Both, Leora said softly. It's an echo. The last breath of a living city that once held millions. The pendant around her neck began to glow brighter, matching the pulse of the core. The light expanded until it formed a circular hologram above the platform, a map of the galaxy, filled with moving points of light. Ethan looked up, amazed. What is this? Leora stepped closer. It's the memory my mother hid, she said, her voice trembling. A map to all the lost colonies, and to something more, and what's more. Leora looked at him, her expression both fearful and hopeful. The Forge of Creation, a place said to hold the power to rebuild entire worlds. Ethan's heart pounded. If that's true, that could save your kind. Maybe even fix what humans destroyed. Yes, she said quietly, but that's why they're hunting me. Whoever controls the Forge controls everything. Before Ethan could respond, the ground shuddered violently. The beautiful projections flickered. A loud alarm-like hum filled the chamber. They've found us again, Leora said in panic. The hunters are here. Ethan turned toward the far tunnel. From the shadows, figures began to appear, the red glow of their visors cutting through the light of the core. Damn it, Ethan muttered. He looked at Leora. Can you shut this thing down? She shook her head. No, once awakened, it doesn't sleep again. It will keep calling, until someone answers. Ethan's eyes darted to a small bridge of crystal leading deeper into the chamber. Then we don't have time to fight, come on. They ran across the bridge as the hunters opened fire, plasma bolts streaking past them. The crystal floor cracked beneath the impacts, scattering fragments of light. Ethan looked back. The hunters were spreading out, moving like shadows. But as one of them stepped onto the glowing platform, the core reacted. A beam of pure energy shot upward, throwing him across the room. The city was defending itself. Leora turned to Ethan, her expression fierce. It remembers us, she said. It still recognizes my kind. Ethan smirked. Good. Let's make sure it doesn't forget. They dashed toward a spiraling passage ahead, the blue light following them like a living thing. Behind them, the ancient city roared awake, the hum becoming a deep, resonant song that shook the air. Leora's pendant pulsed faster now, resonating with the rhythm of the core. She held it close to her chest, whispering something in her native tongue. Ethan glanced at her, curiosity in his voice. What did you say? She looked up at him, her expression calm yet burning with determination. I told it we're not running anymore, and as they disappeared into the next chamber, the light behind them flared, a promise that something powerful, ancient, and very much alive had chosen to awaken for them. The glowing tunnel led Ethan and Leora into a vast circular chamber. The hum of energy was softer here, almost like a whisper, steady, calm, and alive. The walls were made of crystalline plates that reflected endless light, and at the center stood a tall, floating structure shaped like an hourglass, filled with swirling blue mist. Leora stopped at the edge of the platform, staring at it with wide eyes. This is the heart of the core, she breathed. It speaks only to those who carry the bloodline. Ethan looked around, still catching his breath. It speaks? Before Leora could answer, the mist inside the hourglass began to shift, twisting into a vague, glowing shape. A voice, faint and melodic yet ancient, echoed through the air. It wasn't sound in the normal sense. It was felt deep inside the mind. Child of Alaris, you have returned. Leora's lips trembled. That voice, it knows my name. Ethan stepped closer, unsure if what he was seeing was real. The mist swirled again, forming the image of a woman, tall, elegant, with the same silver eyes as Leora. Her features were calm, kind, and sorrowful. Mother, Leora whispered. Ethan blinked in disbelief. Your mother? But she died years ago, Leora said, her voice shaking. This is a memory imprint. Her essence stored in the core. The holographic figure smiled faintly. My daughter, if you are seeing this, then our world has fallen and the forge still sleeps. I have hidden its key within you, your light, your blood, your will. The path will lead you to it, but you must not travel alone. Only a bond of two can open its door. Leora's eyes filled with tears. A bond of two? She repeated softly. Ethan frowned. You think that means us? The holographic woman turned toward him, her gaze calm but piercing. Human, the voice said, you stand beside my child not by chance but by fate. The heart of your kind was once strong, brave enough to protect, foolish enough to hope. My people saw that in the beginning. Perhaps it survives in you. Ethan felt something heavy in his chest. He didn't know how to respond. The mist pulsed again. To reach the forge, you must cross the ruins of silence where time itself bends. But beware, those who seek power will follow. Protect her. Protect what she carries. For if it falls into the hands of darkness, both your worlds will burn. Then the light began to fade. Wait, Leora shouted. Please, don't leave me again. The image flickered. My daughter, remember, the bond is your strength. And with that, the mist dissolved into the air, leaving the chamber glowing softly once more. Leora stood silently for a long time, her shoulders trembling. Ethan took a slow step closer. She's gone, she said, barely above a whisper. But she left me hope. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then that's what we hold on to. She turned to look at him, her silver eyes glistening with emotion. Do you believe what she said? That we're meant to do this together? Ethan hesitated, then smiled faintly. After everything we've been through, I'd say the universe is trying to tell us something. Leora gave a small, shaky laugh. You sound like an old wanderer. Maybe I am, he said. Just one who keeps ending up in the wrong places with the right people. Their quiet moment was shattered by a deep, rumbling sound. The chamber's walls flickered red. Leora's pendant began to vibrate violently. No, she whispered. They're forcing their way into the core. Ethan's jaw tightened. The hunters. A blinding explosion echoed from the tunnel behind them, and several figures in black armor burst through the light. Their visors glowed crimson and they carried heavy plasma rifles. Grab her, one shouted. The artifact is active. Ethan pulled Leora behind a column as plasma bolts slammed into the ground around them. The crystals shattered into fragments of light. He looked at her. We have to move. She shook her head. If they damage the core, everything here will collapse. The entire city could fall. Ethan thought quickly, scanning the chamber. On the far side, he saw a narrow maintenance bridge leading into darkness. We'll draw them away. Once they follow us, you shut down the chamber's access. She looked at him, terrified. You'll be trapped. He smirked. You healed me once. I think I still owe you. Before she could argue, Ethan darted from cover, drawing the hunter's attention. Plasma fire followed him instantly, but he kept moving, sprinting toward the far bridge. The glow of the core reflected off his face. Determination, exhaustion, and something deeper. Leora hesitated for only a second before pressing her palm to the core's console. The lights responded to her command, sealing the inner passage. She whispered softly, Be careful, Ethan. And as the hunters pursued him into the shadows, the core pulsed one final time, as if acknowledging that destiny had just chosen its two guardians. The sound of plasma fire echoed through the core's metallic halls. The once calm and glowing sanctuary now trembled with violence. Ethan sprinted across the bridge, the air around him burning with heat as crimson blasts flew past. Every step he took shook the narrow path beneath his boots. The hunters were closing in fast. Stop him, shouted one of the armored men, their voices mechanical through their helmets. Ethan glanced back, heart pounding. There were at least 6 of them, all trained, all armed, and all eager to kill. He ducked behind a broken support beam, catching his breath for a second. His arm ached where the plasma bolt had grazed it. Smoke rose from his sleeve. He muttered to himself, Guess I still attract trouble. From behind him, a faint voice came through his earpiece. Leora's. Ethan, can you hear me? I'm here, he whispered, keeping his voice low. I've sealed most of the entrances, but the core's energy is destabilizing. They're trying to drain it, she said, panic in her voice. If they succeed, the whole structure will collapse, including the surface city above us. Ethan peeked over the beam. Then we stop them before that happens. Alone? She asked. He smirked faintly. You've seen me do worse. Leora didn't answer, but he could feel her worry through the silence. The hunters advanced slowly, scanning the area with red laser sights. The human is isolated, one said. End this quickly. Ethan took a deep breath and picked up a loose metal rod beside him. It wasn't much, but it would do. He waited until one of the hunters came close. Then he moved like lightning. He swung the rod, knocking the rifle out of the man's hand, then kicked him into another. Sparks flew as armor clashed against metal. Plasma fire lit up the dark corridor as Ethan rolled behind a pillar, grabbed the fallen rifle and fired back. 2 hunters dropped, their armor smoking. Not bad for a mechanic, he muttered, reloading clumsily. But there were still more. The remaining soldiers surrounded him, closing in with heavy footsteps. Just as one aimed at his chest, a blinding flash filled the hall. The lights flickered blue. Energy rippled through the air like a storm. Then from the end of the corridor she appeared. Leora. Her silver eyes glowed brighter than ever, her pendant floating just above her hand. The core's energy flowed through her veins, visible under her skin like strands of light. The hunters turned, startled. Target anomaly detected. Ethan stared in awe. Leora, what are you doing? I'm not running anymore, she said softly, her voice layered with a strange harmonic echo. She raised her hand. The light from the pendant exploded outward, forming a shimmering wave. The plasma bolts fired at her dissolved midair. Then with a flick of her wrist, the light surged forward, knocking the hunters back as if hit by a shockwave. They crashed against the walls, their armor sparking, systems shorting out. Ethan shielded his eyes from the glare. Remind me never to make you angry. Leora smiled faintly, but her body trembled. The energy was overwhelming. I can't hold it much longer, she said, her voice weak. Then we finish this, Ethan said, stepping beside her. He lifted the plasma rifle again, taking aim at the final 2 hunters trying to recover. Together they fought, man and alien side by side, light and fire blending in chaos. After a final burst, the hall fell silent. The air was filled with smoke and the faint hum of the core returned. Leora collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. Ethan dropped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You did it, he said. She shook her head. No, we did it. The glow from her pendant dimmed slightly, then pulsed again. Steadier now, calmer. What happens next? Ethan asked quietly. Leora looked toward the chamber's far wall where the core's energy formed a faint doorway. The forge is waking up, she whispered. But it's not over yet. The real power, the one my mother spoke of, it's waiting beyond that gate. Ethan followed her gaze. The doorway shimmered like liquid light, humming softly. He sighed. Figures. One battle ends, another begins, she smiled weakly. That's life for people like us, isn't it? People like us? He asked. The ones who keep fighting, she said. Ethan nodded slowly. Then as the core chamber stabilized, the sound of distant machinery filled the air. They could hear ships approaching and fast. They found us again, Leora whispered. Ethan helped her to her feet. Then we go through the gate. Whatever's on the other side, we face it together. She met his eyes, her silver gaze glowing faintly in the dim light. Together, she agreed. As they stepped toward the shimmering door, the core pulsed one last time, as if blessing them, lighting their path forward. And then, with a flash of light, both disappeared beyond the threshold. A surge of blinding light swallowed Ethan and Leora as they crossed the gate. When the brightness faded, they found themselves standing on a vast metallic platform floating in endless space. Below them, the forge stretched out like an ocean of light, massive rings spinning slowly around a glowing heart that pulsed like a living star. Ethan squinted. Where are we? Leora stepped forward, her silver eyes wide. The forge, she whispered. The heart of my people's legacy. It was never just a weapon or machine. It's alive. As she spoke, the air shimmered. Glowing symbols appeared beneath their feet, spinning around them like constellations. The hum of the forge grew louder, vibrating through the floor and into their bones. Ethan could feel it. A rhythm, a heartbeat, calling out to Leora. She placed a hand over her chest, trembling. It recognizes me. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Ethan asked, glancing around nervously. Before she could answer, a voice, deep, resonant, and ancient, filled the chamber. It wasn't coming from any direction. It came from everywhere. Child of the Silver Star, you have returned. Leora froze. That voice. It's the Keeper. Ethan frowned. Keeper? The Forge's guardian, she said softly. An ancient AI, it protects the knowledge of my ancestors. The air rippled, and from the swirling light a towering figure emerged, made of pure energy, shaped like a humanoid, but with flowing patterns of light across its form. Its eyes glowed like twin suns. You carry the blood of the lost, it said. But you are not pure. You stand beside a human. Why? Ethan felt the weight of its gaze, heavy, almost crushing. Leora stepped in front of him, defiant. Because he saved me, she said firmly. Twice when no one else did. The Keeper tilted its head. The human species destroyed more worlds than it saved. Yet this one chose compassion over fear. Ethan gave a dry laugh. Yeah, I tend to do stupid things like that. The light around the Keeper flickered slightly and almost like amusement. Then it turned serious again. The Forge is dying, it said. Its power has been drained by those who hunt you. If balance is not restored, your world and then his one will burn together. Leora's voice trembled. Tell me what I must do. The Keeper raised a glowing hand. To awaken the Forge, one must bind their life to it. A link of energy, eternal and unbroken. Ethan's expression hardened. You mean it'll kill her? It will transform her, the Keeper said. She will no longer be flesh and blood. She will become part of the Forge, the living core that sustains it. Leora's eyes dimmed slightly. So I become one with it. Ethan shook his head. No, there has to be another way. She turned to him, her face calm but sad. Ethan, you saw what they did out there. They'll never stop. If I don't do this, they'll destroy everything. Your city, my people's memory. Everything. He clenched his fists. Then I'll fight them. We'll find another way together. Leora smiled faintly. You already did enough. You gave me hope when I had none. The symbols on the floor began to glow brighter, the hum deepening. The Forge was waking. Time was running out. She touched Ethan's cheek gently, her skin warm against his. Promise me you'll live, she whispered. Promise me you'll tell them we weren't monsters. His voice broke. Leora, don't. Before he could stop her, she stepped into the light. A burst of energy exploded outward. Ethan shielded his eyes, shouting her name. But the sound was drowned by the roar of the awakening Forge. The rings began spinning faster, light spiraling into the heart of the structure. The entire place trembled like a sleeping giant rising after centuries, then silence. Ethan lowered his arm slowly. The platform was empty. Only a faint glow hovered where she had stood, her pendant floating in midair. He caught it gently, pressing it to his chest. Goodbye, Leora, he whispered. The Forge pulsed once. A soft, rhythmic thrum, almost like it was answering him. Outside, the sky above the ruined city shifted. The hunters' ships froze mid-flight as beams of light rose from the earth surrounding them. Then, without warning, the ships vanished, erased in an instant. The Forge had chosen its protector. Ethan stood at the edge of the platform, watching the light fade into calm starlight. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace and loss. But as he turned to leave, a familiar voice echoed softly in his mind. Leora's. I'm still here, Ethan. Watching, guiding. You're not alone. He looked up at the sky and smiled faintly. Guess I'll hold you to that. The stars shimmered above him, brighter than before. The war was over, but the legend of the human who loved an alien, and the alien who became a star, had just begun.